let's talk about this real quick to bring in our guest. You made a tweet over here. It says Nicaragua is now recognizing the People's Republic of China as the legitimate government representing Taiwan is extremely vital to cementing a relationship between China and Nicaragua. In other words, they're breaking away from Taiwan. They broke all ties. This was broke by Kasachua News. Of Kasachua News, we have with us our guest today, Camila. How you doing, Camila?
Hey, I'm good. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we can hear you.
Fabulous.
Who's that poster of behind you, by the way? Who is that over there, over your left shoulder? Who's that?
That's Commander Fidel. It is a 1987 calendar of Commander Fidel that we put up just because I'm kind of like I made myself a makeshift studio because, as you guys know, I'm always on the road.
Yeah.
No, we were on the road with you.
We finally caught up with you.
And dude, like, it's so crazy. It's so exhausting. I mean, I don't know, man.
It is really exhausting. When you guys said you were gonna like take off from Nicaragua and go to, well, you guys were talking about going to a number of places, but I was just like, that's too much work. Like, why would you choose to do that? I already don't advise anyone do that unless they have, like, I guess, a team, and you guys kind of are a team, so maybe it works.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's still hard, but yeah,
it's hard work.
Camila, you've been with us in Nicaragua, and we're gonna start. We're gonna talk about Venezuela, but we want to start with Nicaragua a little bit because, this is a really big deal, right? They broke ties with Taiwan. They recognize a one-state China. So why is this such a big deal for people that may not? Because you said you were at the nail salon and you were like almost like through everything. You were ecstatic. Tell us why this is such a big deal.
Yes, I said I was at the nail salon for a friend's chat, not for the whole world. No, I was actually, because, as you know, we were invited to this press conference by the foreign ministry in which the different diplomatic, the different ambassadors from around the world joined the call to hear from Foreign Minister of Nicaragua, Denis Moncada, and a number of members of the Nicaraguan national press and foreign press were also invited. And, in all my moving around, I got a little confused about the time zones. Now I'm on Eastern time. I'm actually in Toronto. I'm here to, for reasons of democratic promotion, trying to bring democracy to Canada. But I ended up being in the nail salon at the end, at the time that this began. So I logged on and I was absolutely just losing my shit because, the Wi-Fi is not so great. I don't have a SIM card, but I knew what was happening. And I was just like literally freaking out. You guys know, everyone is in any of these like journalists and Nicaragua chats know that it's a very exciting time. It's something that we had been speaking about when we were in Nicaragua in November 7th were the general elections there in which the Sandinista president, Commander Daniel Ortega, was reelected alongside Vice President Rosario Murillo. And so, everyone who had been there during these elections, particularly these sort of like anti-imperialist reporters, were kind of discussing, how it's really bizarre with 180 countries around the world having, strong relationships, or well, at least they have some form of diplomatic relations established with China, that some small amount of countries, mostly in Central America and the Caribbean, continue to have supposed ties with Taiwan. So that was broken yesterday at 4:30 p.m. Managua time. And, following that announcement by Denis Moncada, which was very brief, a working meeting began between the presidential advisor, Laureano Ortega Murillo, in China, and they announced the resumption of ties between Nicaragua and China. Maybe you guys already went over this, I'm not sure. But so it's super exciting. Why it's significant to us? Well, I would really like people who are not as amped up about this sort of China SALAG or SALAC partnership, which is China and 32 countries of the Caribbean and Latin American community. people who are not excited about this, I would really like for them to come and shadow me. Maybe they can be a junior producer. Maybe they can be a video editor. I don't know. But shadow me around Latin America and see what the conditions are like and the reality of underdevelopment in Latin America through all these different countries, which the majority of them, the exceptions, of course, being Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua, have for many decades overwhelmingly had governments who have partnered with the United States and have had extremely close relationships with the United States. The United States has been there on the ground with all of their, sort of development projects and agencies. And we're just seeing a continuation of underdevelopment, absolutely bleak material conditions for people, lack of opportunity for young people in all sorts of countries of the global south. As we know, this is a known fact, no matter what your background is. If you're not from the north, if you're from some diaspora community from another country, what are the people in your country doing? A lot of them are still talking about what countries they can immigrate on based on the passport they have. If they're from Ecuador, they have a special relationship and ties with the government of Spain. So they're talking about going to Spain to go to university to learn English, going to Spain to learn English so that maybe once they're done with their degree in Spain, they can go to another country and get a job because they know they don't want to stay in Ecuador now under the neoliberal regime that just took office following 4 years of a neoliberal disaster government. And so this is the reality. People don't want to stay in their countries, under all of the money that's being just absolutely showered by the United States on these different corrupt allied regimes. We're not seeing a lot of things being built or invested into public programs and into the actual populations to improve the conditions there. So, at this point, I think people are starting to see once and for all that there aren't more than one imperialist power, that really there's just, the global US empire and its allies, and that there are other, that there are different roads towards development, but that it's very important that at one point or another we begin to catch up. I mean, do we not deserve that? Are we not deserving of the same things that exist here? Here you go, I'm in Toronto, Canada. Here you go up the street, I'm in like a hipster, eclectic, but actually very upper middle class area where you walk up the street. I'm sure you guys are familiar because of where you live. And there are like little places that are like chocolatiers, I don't know what they're called, but where you buy $10 pretzels dipped in chocolate, where you buy a coffee that's $5.50, where you buy, gummy bears that are coated in blah, blah. And it's actually, you have to wait in line to buy something at all of the stores, and all of the stores are like that. These are the things people have. There's so many different gifts. It's holiday time. People are buying stuff. There's so many different things people can buy. Why are these products not available in some countries? Well, because they're blockaded, because they're sanctioned, and because people are afraid to sell to those countries. And those governments have difficulties importing basic goods and necessities. The others, I mean, it's just people are earning extraordinarily low wages. There's no jobs for anyone in any age category. And so, people just live in a lower standard of living across the global south. This is the case for all of Latin America. And so, we need to begin to build these ties, South-South cooperation. That means, most importantly, with the large powers and large economies. Ideally, we would have these sorts of relationships with the United States and with all the European countries that were not antagonistic and that were for mutual benefit. And that, of course, is the end goal, is that sort of a multipolar world in which the decisions are made based on multilateralism and mutual respect, but we're at a point where they're not. So what we're looking towards is we're looking to all sorts of cooperation and trade agreements and all sorts of different of ways of organizing ourselves that include these smaller states here in, this is the first time you're talking to me that I'm in Latin America. I'm not in Latin America, but in the Americas, in Latin America and the Caribbean, teaming up with, or doing a collab with Russia, with China, with African states and other Asian states as well, in order to build a whole new world. And so it's extraordinarily important. If you see what everything is like in Nicaragua, it's very different from basically all other countries of Latin America, I would say. Nicaragua is the nicest country, has the nicest roads, it's clean, it's safe, there are no transnational criminal organizations. The Nicaraguan government has been successful in wiping out that sort of narco trafficking, those illicit activities that exist in all of the neighboring countries: Honduras, unfortunately, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, Guatemala, and of course, Mexico. And then, to the south of Central America, Colombia. So these sorts of crimes don't exist. The level of disappearances don't exist that we see in other countries, of extortion. There's just a very high quality education compared to all of the countries of the region. There's a high quality free universal public healthcare system. Just obviously more gender equality than you'll see around the region. And it's just clean and safe. It actually looks and feels like a place you want to be. And I would say another country that kind of follows, that's just right behind Nicaragua, well, not right behind, but it's a little far less developed, is Bolivia. They've had very similar economic models. And of course, it's very difficult to say that it's the same for Cuba and Venezuela, because those are countries that are under extremely tight blockades and unilateral coercive measures that make it extremely difficult to import the necessary, supplies and things that they need for everything imaginable. But this is going to change things, and this is just the beginning. They're speaking about canal project and all sorts. And those talks began today. So this is going to be very important, as you guys have probably mentioned as well. Honduras and the president-elect there, Xiomara Castro, will be also likely, after she takes office in January, will be recognizing China and doing away with that supposed diplomatic relation with Taiwan.
Go ahead.
Well, we don't know about that yet, because there's a lot of talk out there that she might not do that, and fear that what happened to her husband in 2009 with the coup might happen to her. There are 3 military bases in Honduras. They're in a different situation in Nicaragua. That's 3 U.S. military bases.
But she hasn't taken power yet.
She hasn't taken power.
Absolutely. I have faith. I want to have faith that she will. Right now, they're in the situation Nicaragua was, where they were recognizing Taiwan. So, I have faith that they will. But there's already a lot of people trashing her government already, even when she hasn't taken power, because of that, which is,
I asked the question to Manuel Zelaya. Manuel Zelaya was kind of like having faith a little bit, just have faith, whatnot. It is a different situation. And when it comes to Nicaragua, even though they were hit with these sanctions, Camila, I feel like Daniel Ortega and the Sandinista government knew this was coming. Like, they were prepared for this. I mean, this is a country that is 90% Nicaragua food efficient. They can feed themselves. And, when you talk about Bill Wee, Wyatt Reed came with us from Sputnik Radio. He came with us to Bill Wee, and he had been in Bill Wee years before. And he said, my God, they've built roads, they've built buildings right now. You can move around. Ahmed Cabello was going from Managua to Bill Wee with our friend Steven, and he said it took him 10 hours, but the trip used to have to take him 3 days. So the infrastructure projects in Nicaragua are there. Now we have China sitting at the table, right? Are these sanctions from the United States going to even be effective for them, Camila, for the United States? Because it seems like Daniel Ortega has a grip on the country and is now moving forward with more projects.
Yeah, exactly as you've said. It's not going to have the same effect as we've seen in Cuba, which has been under blockade for 60 years, or on Venezuela, who, they were just coming, they had been in power, but I think, they were attacked at a particularly weak point when Nicolas Maduro was succeeding Commander Hugo Chavez after he passed away. The food sovereignty is key. The fact that the country is already on its development path, so far into it, that it already has these massive projects, I think they're absolutely not going to be able to turn that around. And in fact, we've seen, as I think was presented to us, I'm not sure if you guys, was presented to me this summer when it was released, but maybe to us as well when we were there for the elections in Nicaragua. But they just have a very extensive economic plan for the next, 5 years or whatever it is. So this is more, I think that this announcement was more exciting for the entire region and world than for Nicaragua per se, because we have CARICOM as kind of a multilateral integrationist project. We have ALBA, now we have SALAG. And all of these different organizations are trying to find ways of building ties with China and have China as a key part of development here in the region. And so, I think the canal could potentially make an absolutely massive impact on the way in which we trade.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the United States has control over all of the waters, much of the waters surrounding our continent. This is a huge problem. But I think, where the anti-China people would say that this is some sort of, Chinese expression of Chinese imperialism or whatever the hell it is they say, it is literally the opposite. It's about the countries here having sovereignty over their own territories and water. It's about actually being able to balance things out for the first time and not living in fear or being coerced into corners, backed into the decisions that don't represent the will of the people or the governments that they elected to represent them. So it changes absolutely everything beyond just Nicaragua.
Yeah, and speaking of that, when we were in Honduras, we saw kind of a little bit of animosity from some people towards Nicaragua, not recognizing their elections. And it's not everybody, right? It was like middle of the road. Some people were very supportive and some people were not. And that was just our experience in Honduras, that Ortega didn't actually win his election. And some people were like, no, we need to build relationships with Nicaragua. So what type of relationship do you think the Sandinistas government will have with the Libre Party in Honduras?
That is extraordinarily important. I mean, what you've just described there is just the result of the far right controlled media that we see all over Latin America, absolutely smearing any leftist government. In the countries I've been living in recently, in Ecuador and in Peru, in Bolivia, I watched Peruvian media as well, but we see kind of like, Rafael Correa being smeared. We see Lula. We're in South America. I can only imagine that in the case of Central America, there's in all of these countries, including El Salvador, there's a very strong war on the Sandinistas. But unfortunately, anyone who holds those beliefs haven't actually been to the country. When they go to the country, they'll see that if you actually speak to people, you'll be able to find someone possibly who's against the government. But on a whole, like at least 4 out of 5 people are going to be extremely supportive of the government, and they have their reasons, and they say they've always voted Sandinista and they'll continue to, and nothing has changed, unlike what the reports of the foreign media seem to say, that all these people were Sandinistas and they left and they abandoned that support. That absolutely doesn't exist. So obviously there's going to be some regurgitating of those far right views that this wasn't a democratic election. I experienced that myself just talking to immigration officers in different airports. They say, where are you going? I was in El Salvador. I spoke to one of these narco officers who pulled me aside and, was trying to look through my things and stuff. And I said, I'm a reporter. I'm going to Nicaragua. There are elections there. He's like, oh, they have elections? And he was trying to make a joke saying are there any other presidential candidates running? And I said, yes, in fact, there are 7. And, he had all these jokes, and it's just obvious that he just watches the one channel. And that one channel he watches has nothing to do with any reflection of reality. So I think already there are some very important ties that have been maintained throughout all of the coup between the people of Honduras, the social movements, the Libre Party, and the Sandinistas. Those, despite this long period of a total lack of democracy there, those relations were maintained. We at La Via Campesina, the social movement, which is one of the largest social movements in the world, is extremely key and to Central America. It's very much Central America, and Nicaragua specifically is kind of a base for La Via Campesina in Latin America. So some of the very key leaders of La Via Campesina in Central America are actually based in Honduras. So this means that it's kind of like a base for the most important social movement in which they go between different countries. They're building internationally on issues like food sovereignty. These are not issues that peoples are dealing with individually. It's not total anarchism. It's not all sorts of like little communities and peoples and indigenous peoples having their own little project and everything is like decentralized and blah, blah. Actually, in some ways, the issue of food sovereignty is being tackled in a very coordinated fashion. So, they're fighting against, they're fighting at the United Nations and against big agro corporations, against pesticides, against GMOs, and trying to democratize like food production and distribution around the world. So this is kind of like below the level of government and below the government or below the level of, electoral politics or whatever else. There's a relationship that exists on another level, and that's between social movements. And that has been extremely key. There was a delegation that went from Nicaragua to Honduras during the elections to support, those democratic elections, that process, and ensure that that everything went smoothly, and that's very important because like when we on the news, especially on the big networks, we talk about all the electoral missions there. So there's always going to be the OAS. There are some electoral observer missions from Latin America, but they're kind of structured in the same way as the UN observer mission, as the European Union. But it's very important that there's a presence of social movements and independent media, as you guys know as well. So I think that is going to be extraordinarily important, that there's pressure from below, from the social movements, from the campesinos, the indigenous people, the Afro-descendant populations that are pushing the government towards certain policies so that the government knows that they're not alone. This has been key in the case of Bolivia. In the case of Bolivia, the sorts of policies that the mass government, beginning with Evo and now with Lucho Arce, they've taken stands that have been extremely bold and difficult to take. And, they would be extremely unpopular to the United States and their allies. And the reason they've been able to take these positions is because they know that they have the majority of the country supporting them. They don't have just 40% or, whatever it is of the population, but the majority support these sorts of these positions against imperialism, against intervention, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be extremely important when we see these different attempts and maneuvers to overthrow the government or not allow the government of Honduras to even take power, that they receive that constant push from below and supporting their anti-imperialist policies, their integrationist policies, and trying to build with the countries around them. They'll need that mandate from the people.
Yeah. It's funny though, because I didn't think that this move from China, from Nicaragua to push out Taiwan and to let China come in quickly, I didn't think it would happen this fast. I was still kind of like, well, maybe it will be a slow pace thing. But now with China here, and you've even talked about the canal, like America has control of the Panama Canal, right? They control the maritime waterways, how trade is made. So are you scared that if they go along with these projects, right, that there might be some type of military attack, maybe from the United States, or less, maybe like a proxy attack, sending paramilitary groups in from Honduras and El Salvador, some gangs in there to cause some things? Is that really possible for this to happen if America, it feels that, this project with China and Nicaragua can really take off?
I think that they no longer have control of the media narrative and that they know that. And for that reason, they've had to rely on these mercenaries and paramilitaries. They can no longer do these outright attacks and invasions the way they did, in 1989 in Panama. And so I think that'll be, I don't think that we'll see that sort of like blatant military intervention, but that we will see these attacks and hostilities from the neighboring countries, like you guys said, Costa Rica. But I mean, this is I think it's just becoming extraordinarily difficult for them. I mean, as it is, they were pushed to accept that the left was going to take power in Honduras what we're told is that the United States is represented by Salvador Nasrallah, and that he's supposed to be kind of the agent of the United States within the left. He was the presidential candidate for the Libre Party in Honduras in 2017. He actually won, but of course those elections were fraudulent and were taken away from him. But he was never kind of a leftist figure. He is the sort of liberal guy. And so he's going to be given, assuming everything goes as planned and she actually takes power, he and some of his people, for their support in this big coalition that was formed in order to win the elections, is going to be given a number of seats in the cabinet. And there will be some danger within that. You guys know the situation of Peru better than I do, but there's going to be a lot of pressure within the government, even beyond the sorts of hostilities that they might find from the exterior. So that could make it extremely difficult to, pursue the sort of progressive agenda within her government.
Yeah, so let's get quickly to Venezuela. You went out to cover the elections in Venezuela. We had one of our comrades on as well to talk about it. But I want to hear from you. What was the sentiment out in Venezuela and prior and to the election and then after the election?
Yeah, I think Venezuelans are just really good at elections. Everything just runs extremely smoothly, efficiently. It's just so obvious that there's no sort of irregularities on a major scale, and there was almost nothing to report on in the way that there was with you guys. So of course we know that in the case of Honduras, the country voted for the left. They wanted to change. But even within that, you guys were reporting, the ways in which there was some voter suppression, just a lot of technical problems. Same with Peru, like people not showing up to do their kind of like poll duty and stuff like that. I mean, no such thing exists in Venezuela. So it's just kind of like sitting at the poll. I mean, I was like tired of getting all of my B-roll and everything of just the same thing of people voting. So I was just sitting outside of the polling stations, just talking to people who were like just hanging out, like, whatever, having a chat on the curb and just talking to everyone. And I think this is the first time, obviously this is the first time that all sectors, including the far right, US-backed opposition, actually participated. And the narrative that they would like to spin is that if they put all of their parties and candidates together and they all went on one slate, and they joined forces, and they would have more, they would be more electorally viable and they would win the entire elections. If they said that if this were a presidential election, which just took place, the opposition would have won. I mean, it wasn't a presidential election. What they had was, 25 or whatever. I mean, probably just literally a bajillion different parties and candidates. And the Venezuelan ruling party, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, won overwhelmingly, like 20 states. So plus the Caracas, the federal district. So the opposition had absolutely no chance, despite that for the first time, instead of demobilizing people and telling people to abstain, they actually were out and about trying to get people pumped up for this election. They were actually going on the Venezuelan national news networks and sitting down in studio and having these having these sorts of interviews where they're like campaigning and telling all of their talking points and all of their promises. They were attacking the PSUV candidates. And so they absolutely were trying to mobilize people, and they still lost. So I think that this, in some ways, it indicates to the Chavistas that they do need to look out. Obviously, there were a lot of people who went out and voted for the opposition. That looks scary on paper, but in the end, they the PSUV won all of the governorships. I think that's what matters most, right? Like under the national level, if they won all of the states, and that's all that matters. But I think none of the electoral observer missions that were there reported any irregularities, apart from, I think, was it the European Union? I mean, it was just kind of ridiculous. I think, you know, they always have to cast some doubt on the process. But at the end of the day, I think like what people are talking about now is this sort of opportunity that the opposition has to recall the president. That is after 3 years, I believe, in office, they are able to call for a recall vote in which the president would be put to a national vote and could actually lose the presidency. So this is something that they feel that they can talk about. And if it were to happen, it would happen in March. It would require both sides to do a lot of campaigning. But in Venezuela, in Venezuela, there's just all sorts of signs of economic recovery. I mean, it's just a totally different country in some ways.
Venezuela, right?
In Venezuela, everything is just becoming more and more available. All the sorts of products that we saw on all of these, you know, stupid news outlets that were saying that they weren't available, or that you had to stand in these big long lines. I mean, if any of that existed for some period between, you know, 2017 to 2019, they've reappeared now. People are getting their hands on them. I've been at my friends' houses. Like if you go to a bathroom, you see the same products that we have in the north there in Venezuela as well, which is just like Colgate toothpaste, you know, Pantene shampoo, like it's all the same. And people are finding ways of making income in dollars because a lot of things, unfortunately, is in dollars now. It's something that the, you know, Chavistas want to do is to try to protect their own currency. But with all these signs of recovery, there's also just tons of people who, you know, economic migrants who were forced to leave because of how difficult things were under the sanctions, or they were coerced into leaving, tricked into leaving, promised a better life in places like Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador. They're actually now returning, and they're actually making money in dollars and just kind of have like a better life now in Venezuela. And we're expecting to see a really large wave of people like that coming back this December, because they always come back around the holidays, and they'll be there to stay. So I think, you know,
that's great.
It's good to hear.
That's great. Did you see any crypto going around in there? We heard from our other comrade that Bitcoin is kind of getting in there right now, and they're taking some payments, and it's actually helped them get around some of the sanctions. Have you witnessed any of that when you were in Venezuela, in particular Caracas?
I mean, that's been there for years. I mean, Venezuela was the first country in the Americas to do that. Beginning, I mean, I first saw it in 2018, where you just kind of have these, they call them like, well, they have like bodegas or something. I think they call them that. I mean, it's a very specific name for a place that, I mean, I know the word bodega exists everywhere, but like there, it usually means these kind of stores for middle-class people where they have like imported items. So it's not just like a corner store with like the cheapest like iced tea or whatever, but it's like where you get like a Diet Dr. Pepper, cherry Coke, like those sorts of things. And you pay dollars for them. And so those sorts of places have been accepting all sorts of different crypto for years now. And so I can only imagine that now that that's becoming more of a thing around the world and continent, that it's increased. I personally wasn't even looking for it. I was shocked and pleased to find that you can now use a credit card again. For a while, you weren't able to use credit. The only thing you could really use to buy anything was like a Venezuelan debit card. And you couldn't even use cash, obviously, because the cash was, you know, not worth a whole lot, let's say. And so, yeah, now all those companies are coming back. You can use credit card. Yeah, they are taking more payments. So I'm not sure, did they say Bitcoin specifically, or?
One of our friends, our comrades talked about the fact that he saw more crypto and Bitcoin usage in Venezuela this time out, more than usual. So just was wondering if, you know, and this is news to me that they were one of the first to have it there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Like, I wish I could remember I had taken pictures, but like even at the place where I took my PCR test, like they always have like a whole list, and this is so specific to Venezuela that has had so many problems with payments and cash, that they always have a list of all the different ways you can send money. You can send money, this is not crypto, but you can send money through Zelle. I mean, that's kind of weird for a Latin American country. They'll receive payment for a PCR test through Zelle, through PayPal, through all of these different, all of the different things. And that's at a clinic, a private clinic. So, but at some of those bodegas, they have all of those things. Plus they list the crypto that they accept. That includes the petro. But it's kind of, the petro is something that's still kind of like unutilized, that they began to distribute, and they did an experiment with giving people the equivalent of what was at the time $30, I think, in petro, and people just kind of spent it right away because they didn't want to hold on to it because they didn't know what it was or what to do with it. It's a very important project that a lot of people are hoping that they'll bring back and continue to kind of give out, because the Venezuelan government gives out bonuses, sometimes multiple times a month, for different things, for like mothers with children, for back to school, for Mother's Day, all sorts of things like that. And it just arrives as a text message, and it's linked to the Patria system, and you go online through your app and you deposit it into your bank account. But it's currently done in the Venezuelan like Soberano, but it could also be a way for them to distribute petro, so that people are using crypto to be able to buy necessary goods, but it's not something they're doing yet.
And just, I don't know if you have any questions.
That's it,
I just wanted to say, just to wrap up, Joe Biden's having his democracy summit today. It was the last day. They invited Juan Guaido. We know that he's nobody in Venezuela. Is there anybody else that, because we've heard, there's a new guy in town. Do you who is this guy? Does he have any sort of anything?
He's not a new guy. No, he's a very old guy, and he's a guy that the U.S. passed up a long time ago, because he was the guy. Like, he was the coup, the face of the coup, Leopoldo Lopez, for many years. And there have been many of these people who the U.S. thought would sort of lead, their coup attempts and be able to run in elections at first, and then also that they thought they might be able to insert into the country as some, I don't know. They were trying to use him as a Guaido before.
Right.
They passed up on him because they didn't want to have someone with such a tarnished record, because from the very beginning of these sorts of mercenary attempts and all these different things that have gone on throughout the years, from the Guarimbas in 2014, the Nicaraguan government, was the Venezuelan government. Sorry, the Venezuelan government was very clear about who was behind financing the Guarimbas, who was organizing these kids to go do meth and commit crimes. And one of those people was Leopoldo. And so they knew that when they needed to choose a Guaido person, that they couldn't choose someone that has just been so widely denounced. So they passed up on him, but he's just has a much higher profile because, he was considered to be, by the far right of the continent in Europe, he was considered to be a political prisoner. And so his wife and some of the other far right actors raised a really high profile for him internationally, and people know his name within the country, whereas no one knew Guaido's name in January of 2019 at the time he swore himself in. So I think they're just trying to go back to the basics, because the degree to which Guaido has failed. But speaking to people within Venezuela, it's just really important. And I spoke to so many people, but I didn't record it because I know people get weird if they're not used to, these are not media people. They don't have media training. They're not celebrities. They're just regular people. So they get kind of weird if you put a camera on their face and say you're going to ask them questions. But I spoke to a number of people who just plain and simply said that they're against the government. They wish there was an alternative. They would like to, they would like to have someone else to vote for. They think these chavistas are bad, but these ones are good. This governor was a good chavista. This one, this one is controlling this or that, whatever it is. But they also say that they don't support Guaido, and that they had hoped when he came on the scene and they found out who he was, they had hoped that this would be, that this would be a good thing, that there would be they actually would like to see some sort of democratic opposition to the PSUV government, but they said that this isn't it, that this is all people who are just embellishing themselves, that they're embroiled in corruption, and that they've been receiving all sorts of money to be the opposition here and try to take power from the legitimate government. And so they think that it's a total lost cause. They don't support any of those actors. Who they might be supporting is some of the other figures of the opposition, some of who are known, some of them who ran in these regional elections, but they completely denounce and would like to distance themselves from these corrupt U.S.-backed actors. So I think, the U.S. is having to start over again. The opposition there is going to have to start over again. And there's so many different oppositions. And we met with, just one last thing, we met with the National Assembly. A number of electoral observers and some journalists, while we were there for the elections, met with members of the National Assembly of Venezuela, two of which were from opposition parties. One was with the governing Chavistas, and the opposition members of parliament basically also completely reject the Guaido faction of the opposition and say these people are violent. They're going to the exterior. They're asking for sanctions. They're against the sanctions themselves. These like democratic opposition. I mean, this is debatable as well, because obviously all people from the opposition have kind of gone to war with the government and have done a horrible job of denouncing all the violence that took place in 2017, where people lost their lives just for being a Chavista. So, but they too have been trying to create some distance between them and the other far right. So, so it's very important to know that just across the board, whether it's the Chavistas or the other supporters of different oppositions there, most people are rejecting sanctions. Most people want, the government and their elected authorities to be chosen within the country and not externally. And so they're not going to be willing to support another Guaido.
Yeah. Johnny, did you have a question?
Are you guys done asking questions?
Yeah,
we're done. Johnny's got a
Hi,
question for you,
Jonathan.
Camila.
Hey, Camila, how you doing? What's the best food out there right now?
I didn't know if Johnny is like an on-camera person, or how does this work? People just know he's behind the camera. He doesn't get to come on
in front of the camera sometimes, and sometimes he just, he's from the bleachers hanging on out. Sometimes he's engineering the show. He's a man of many faces. He does everything on the Convo Couch. So
we need a better studio so I can get my camera.
Yeah, bigger studio.
But yeah, I was gonna ask you, what's your favorite food out there right now, or in Venezuela when you were there?
Oh God. Well, yeah, I'm just the basics. Just arepa is my favorite. Venezuela has a big Arab community. So I did have some Lebanese food while I was there, but I don't think Lebanese food in Venezuela is different from Lebanese food in other places. So I did have some of that, but I honestly eat arepas when I'm at home. No matter what country I'm in, I buy arepa flour. And I just love having it there, knowing that I'm eating it the way it's supposed to be made. And that's my favorite. I usually get it with avocado and something else. Like always with avocado, sometimes with like just egg. If it's breakfast, I'll have like a breakfast arepa or, carne machada.
Wow.
Nice. Well, we all miss you. We'll see you in Nicaragua, and I'll see you on the island.
I'm gonna see you guys in Nicaragua soon, right?
Yeah.
That's really exciting. I'm really excited, and like I'm gonna see this as kind of like I'm just saying it right now. It's gonna be like a party trip for me, a relaxation trip. Obviously I work like a fucking dog, and when you guys saw me when I got sick in Nicaragua, I'm still sick now. I'm not sick now, but I'm just getting over it. And it's literally because I just go nonstop. So I'm really excited to be a part of that and cover the inauguration of Comandante Daniel, but I would really like to enjoy it. And Nicaragua is just such a beautiful country. It has, absolutely wonderful tourism infrastructure and a lot to do there. So I'm hoping I can kind of take a little bit of that and maybe do some fun, like cultural coverage and not work myself to death. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys there. And of course, thereafter on the island with Johnny.
All right, Camila, thank you.
She
so
works
much.
hard, though. Really, to say you work hard, Camila. I really was impressed and
by yourself,
awesome and stuff.
Thank you so much for coming on and educating everybody. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody.
See you guys
Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, on Kasachua News. We're trying to just be on more platforms. Ollie and I are trying to do a stream soon. We thought we would do it before, but all the traveling gets crazy. He's in the Amazon right now, the Amazon of Bolivia, so there's no coverage. But pretty soon we will actually launch our own podcast or stream or whatever. But apart from that, We're on Saskatchewan News on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok.
Yeah. And don't forget, next year coming up in October, we got to go to Brazil because there might be a big showdown over there. Might be Bolsonaro versus Lula. Lula. Early
Just make it Lulu.
October.
Like, who's Lulu?
We'll be there.
Lula.
Yeah. We'll see you there
All right,
too.
Camila, thank you so much. See you later.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Catch you guys later.
Bye.
Camila Escalante, everybody. Saskatchewan News.
Yes, check
Our
them
new
out. They have
friend.
some of the best coverage, especially I think right now, and
Latin
especially in
America.
Bolivia, the
Oh,
best
yeah.
coverage of Bolivia, hands down, and
By
everything
far.
that went down. And yeah, she's always on the go, and when she's by herself, I mean, it's just herself and her camera. So yeah. Check them out.